It says 9 o'clock.
That one's
And
not
that
right,
one's
Jen.
off a couple minutes ago.
We begin our meeting with public comment. We allow folks 2 minutes on any topic that you wish. So if there's anyone here in the audience who would like to share a comment with us, would you please come to the podium, tell us your name and address?
Hi, my name is Linda Johnson. My address is 32530 Bobcat Road, La Crescent. Today, I would like to address a few concerns I have. I hope all of you received the 2-minute video I sent to you last week entitled, "You Decide," and have had time to view it. This video outlines one of the election problems we have in this county, the state, and this country: trusting our elections. As the video displayed, if the lady had trusted the election process using the machines, the result would be totally different, and it would not have been the will of the people. The machine somehow took votes away from her and gave votes to other candidates. I have been told the machines are not connected to the internet. If this is true, then there must be something inside these machines that are altering votes and not tabulating the true will of the voter. Can we solve this problem? One way I feel that we could at least provide trust, transparency, and accountability would be to pass a resolution that would allow the VCRs or vote cast records be turned on at every machine in Winona County. This would allow for a detailed report or report from each machine. A VCR captures the ovals marked on the ballots for each candidate. These reports are then accumulated to produce a summary vote total for each candidate. This report should match the display that is printed out on the tabulators at the end of the election in each precinct. These reports would be a double check on the machines and their accuracy. This would provide transparency. For some reason, Winona County does not seem to have access to these records for the past election. I have submitted data requests for such records from Winona County. The response I received after I requested data for the 2020 election was, and I quote, "Winona County has reviewed its files and has determined that no responsive record to your request, as the reports cannot be generated from the election reporting system used in November 2020. So now you may be saying, well, that was November 2020. But as we all know, by law, election results must be kept for 24 months. And I submitted my request on August 7th within this 24-month time period. So I'm wondering, how did they get the voters' tally report in 2020 if this record does not exist? Please pass a resolution to have all the VCRs or vote cast records turned on in the upcoming general election on November 8th to ensure trust and transparency. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to make a public comment? If so, please come forward to the podium and tell us your name and address and what is on your mind. I'm going to ask 2 more times. Is there anyone here in the audience or someone who's attending this meeting over the internet that would like to make a public comment? If so, please get our attention or come to the podium. And for the 3rd and final time, is there anyone here in the audience or attending this meeting over the internet that would like to participate in the public comment period? If so, please step forward or get our attention. Hearing none, public comment is over. We want to move on to our regular agenda. Item 3 is approval of previous county board minutes.
I'll move to approve 3.1 and 3.2.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Jacob has moved and Commissioner Ward has seconded approval of our closed session from August 23rd of 2020 and the regular county board meeting from August 23rd of 2020. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Minutes are approved. Item 4 is to acknowledge receipt of approved committee minutes.
Move to acknowledge 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3.
Second.
Commissioner Jacob has moved and Commissioner Olson has seconded approval of the receipt of approved committee minutes, which include the Road and Bridge meeting of February 15th, 2022, the Planning Commission of July 21, 2022, and the Whitewater Joint Powers Board of June 16th of 2022. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? We acknowledge the receipt of those minutes. Next item is consent, comments, and approval of agenda. Commissioner Ward?
I would like to ask for a future board action. And that's fine. Thank you.
Commissioner Kavesi?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Olson?
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Jacob?
I might have one item at the end.
An announcement, a board action?
See what Commissioner Ward's item is.
Okay, so it might be a board action. Okay, and I have nothing. So, we have only slightly revised our agenda, but the next item would probably be to approve it as revised.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
A second.
Okay, Commissioner Jacob has moved and Commissioner Kavesi has seconded approval of the amended agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. And Interim Administrator Holte, could you read for us the consent business for the record?
6.1, adopt updated driveway approach policy. 6.2, approve conditional use permit for Heather and Andrew Wapshel. 6.3, approve extension of professional service agreement with Julie Thompson Hakes. 6.4, approve LG 220 gambling application for exempt permit Bluff Country Chapter of Minnesota Deer Hunters Association. 6.5, approve renewal of purchase of service agreement with St. Charles Public School District 865 for transportation of children and youth in foster care placement. And 6.6, confirm payment of disbursements.
I'll move to approve the consent business as read.
Second.
Commissioner Jacob has moved and Commissioner Kavesi has seconded approval of the consent business as it was read into the record. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, consent agenda is passed. We now move on to general business. Item 7.1 is to receive a presentation for the 2023 to 2032 draft 10-year work plan from MnDOT, District 6 Planning Office.
Okay. Oh. Do I have to do something to turn the mic on, or is it on right now? It's on? Okay, we're good. All right, let me know if you're having trouble hearing me. Okay,
Have folks in the back here?
I'm seeing thumbs up. Okay, that's good. Okay, so hello. So first, thank you to the Winona County Board and the chair for having me today. My name is Kurt Wayne. I'm with the Minnesota Department of Transportation District 6, is what we call it, D6 for short. Out of the Rochester office, I'm the principal planner there in the planning department. Today, I wanted to give you information and give you a chance to give me any comments or any questions you may have, and I can try to answer some questions too, pertaining particularly to the planning and programming portion of what MnDOT and the MnDOT district is working on this year. So, yep, that's what we're going to look at today. So I do want to just stress the outline so far is I'll talk about the planning and planning efforts first. So planning a lot of policy, a lot of statewide planning and a couple district plans going on in the past year. I will then shift to sort of the programming side, which is what we anticipate we will be doing as projects in the next 4 and 10 years for our district roadway and bridge work plan. And then I have a little bit of time at the end for some updates I'm able to find about local and regional projects, projects specific to Winona County, what's been going on there and any updates I have on those. So next slide, please. So first up, I wanted to talk about a plan that I believe I brought to this board before. This is a plan that we are just wrapping up statewide as MnDOT. This is the statewide multimodal transportation plan. As you can see, it's 2022 through 2041. So this is a 20-year time horizon that we look at. And this is a very overarching plan for the entirety of MnDOT. This helps us set direction, this helps us set policy, and make sure that our policy and direction is grounded in what we're hearing from people and what people want from the highway system and from the broader transportation system. So as you can see, that's where the multimodal comes in. We're not just looking at the highways in this plan, but we're looking at other modes as well. As you can see here as well, a lot of the focus areas in this round of the plan, we update this plan every 5 years. We looked at aging infrastructure, climate, economy and employment, equity, safety and transportation options too. So next slide, please. The next plan that we're looking at statewide, as I said before, the SMTP or Statewide Multimodal Transportation Plan is wrapping up right now. This one is just starting. So this is the State Highway Investment Plan. Different acronyms, but what you need to know about this one is much more focused on the highway system, so the roads and bridges itself. How do we take the direction from our overarching plan and turn that into where we put the funding towards the maintenance and operations of our highway system? So as you can see, there's a lot to consider in this plan, and there's a lot more public input that we would like to receive as part of this plan, but this one's just starting, as you can see. So you can go to minnesotatogo.org for more information, as you can see on the slides here. There's an interactive investment budgeting tool. This is, I think, a new tool that's part of this planning process to actually give just people, citizens, everyone, a chance to see how they might prioritize certain aspects of the roadway system. Like, would I put more money towards bridges this time? Or would I put more money towards pavement? Would I put more money towards ADA and sidewalk improvements? So it's that sort of kind of give and play, a little bit, almost like a game, a little bit. We're taking that as feedback this year as well for this planning effort. More information to come on this one, but again, this one should be happening for the next 6 to 9 months or so as we're putting all the pieces together. Check out the websites for more information as the plan progresses. Okay, so in addition to these plans, we've also been working on rather quickly, actually, for the next one, the Minnesota Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan. This one had to be a quick plan because it was in response to the new federal funding for electric vehicle infrastructure. So this is statewide, $68 million over the next 5 years. Excuse me, some or most of that being federal funding. And the plan identified 2 alternative fuel corridors for year 1 of funding. This is where we need to put the infrastructure for fast charging stations first. And then, excuse me, actually, I need a little bit of water. I'm sorry.
You sure can.
I was not expecting that. I appreciate it. I think the weather changed. My throat's just drying out a little bit.
It's okay.
It is that too, yes.
It's probably the topic you're talking about. It's pretty, roads, bridges,
There's a lot of words that need to come out. Yeah, yeah.
dusty, elements.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So the basics of the vehicle infrastructure plan, or the electric vehicle infrastructure plan, are that this is the state and federal attempt to build a better system of fast charging stations along our roadways. So we're prioritizing a couple corridors first, Interstates 94 and 35. Once those are built out better, we then direct the funding towards other corridors in other parts of the state for fast charging stations for electric vehicles. In addition to that, our district is working on the local human service transit coordination plan. This plan is nearly complete. It was out for public comment. I believe it's just in our central office in St. Paul now for final review. This is an every 5 years measuring and redefining goals in transit services, transportation. So this is public transit as well as human services transit. So this can be like your transportation to and from doctor's appointments too. So more information on that at the link provided below. Next slide, please. So were there any questions about the planning side, I guess, of the presentation so far?
Well, planning, so like you have the electric car and everything.
Yeah.
Do you know approximately percentages of budget of where the money's coming from that? Is it state money, federal money?
I know that there's definitely federal money coming, and a good amount of federal money. I can't give you exact numbers. I believe there's some state match too. Typically with federal money, there is state match. So my guess is both, but I can't confirm that right now.
That's fine. Because President Biden was throwing all kinds of money at infrastructure, but his definition of infrastructure varied from some of our definitions of infrastructure.
I remember that. I remember this. That's right. This, that plan was done, essentially completed quickly in response to new funding specifically for electric vehicle infrastructure coming from the federal government as part of that broader infrastructure bill. Yes.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. I think with that, I will turn to the programming side of things. So the District 6 10-year highway plan. So this slide is just kind of a reminder. I think you all have probably seen this before, but as a reminder, our acronyms, our Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP, is our projects in the next 4 years. Those are what we call program projects. They have funding designated for them. We know where it's going to come from. They're much closer to construction, and there's been more development work on those projects. Planned projects, or our Capital Highway Investment Plan, or CHIP, is years 5 through 10. Those are projects that are further out, and those are also fiscally constrained, but they're only planned. We don't know exactly where the money's coming from yet. We just know that there's a need in that section for a project, pavement, bridge, or otherwise. So that's kind of the difference in both the timeframes and the difference in how we view projects in these different timeframes. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So this year, we wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of a refresher about some of the funding and how we deal with funding for the state trunk highway system, right? So interstate highways, US highways, and state highways. As you can see, we have 4 primary, but not only 4, but 4 primary sources of funding that we use. That goes into the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund, where some of that can come back out again for local distributions for like county state aid highways. And then the rest of that goes into the State Trunk Highway Fund by a formula that's in law, I believe. This is where we get some of the federal funding that is destined for the state highway system, as well as any other existing trunk highway bonds. And then that funding finally goes to state road construction, which is a lot of what we do in the district here. It also goes to debt service and operations and maintenance. So this was just kind of a refresher about this is how the funding works. This has not changed from previous years, but it's important to note because we do have a new influx or potential influx of federal funding that kind of helps us out a little bit. That's why some of the numbers and some of the projects have changed in Winona County and across our region this year. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So here is that federal funding. So we are at MnDOT kind of responding to the IIJA, as it's known, or Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So this is a federal reauthorization of funds for transportation systems to state DOTs. We expect it to bring approximately $170 million to MnDOT in additional formula funding. So we already received federal funding previously, a few years ago, under like the FAST Act. That was the acronym for the last federal transportation bill. This one, we expect to receive more money statewide over the entirety of the federal act to be able to do the work that we're trying to do with the highway system. So this does not address all project priorities and improvements, but it does help to fill some of the gap that we've been looking at in funding over the past several years. So as you can see here, there's a link if you'd like to learn more about the bipartisan infrastructure law. I think that goes straight to the USDOT's website. That should be in your packets for you. So this kind of leads us to the next slide here. The IIJA becoming federal law and coming to the state of Minnesota, but the IIJA is not technically authorized by the state legislature yet. So these numbers here are still preliminary. They're the best we got to work with, but they don't actually include that new formula funding from the federal government just yet. So this is what we're looking at in terms of our region for the trunk highways for the next 10 years. The blue line is what we predict we will be getting in terms of revenue for our state highway construction program as of this year. And the green line is what we thought we would be getting in those years as of last year. So it's a little bit of comparison. As you can see, there is a dip in 2026 right now. This can happen. This does happen sometimes. A lot of times, MnDOT in our central office in St. Paul, they have to kind of shift money around depending on who's doing what project in what year in what region of the state. So sometimes we see a little bump down, sometimes we see bumps up. But as you can see here, our expectation is a little bit of less money in 2026. Hopefully the IIJA can help fill that gap once that's authorized, but we can't say that for sure now. And then you can see in future years, we actually think we will see a little bit more money per year, kind of as a result of the dip in 2026. Next slide. Oh. There we go. So this is just kind of the disclaimer we put to where why things have changed. There are many factors as to why our program changes and the funding changes. Our program also changes because of predicted payment conditions and even bridge conditions too. We have new measurements. We say, oh, we need to prioritize this one over this one now. So projects get shuffled around. So as usual, these maps you're about to see, they're a snapshot in time. It's what we hope to do in the next 10 years. As of this year, always subject to change. Go ahead. So this was also provided in your packets too. This is just a snapshot of what construction projects we are working on this year. As you can see, there are a few in Winona County, and there are also many others around our district as well. So it's just kind of a snapshot about what else is going on around the district. Then the next slide should be our district-wide for the next 4 years, as you can see here. Again, a lot of work going on, a lot of pavement work, a lot of guardrail work going on too. We have some other of those projects in there, I think in orange potentially. Once we get through this year, it gets a little quieter in Winona County for the next 4 years. There's a couple projects, one on I-90, and we think a pavement project too on US 61 south of Winona. Next slide. Did we switch yet? Oh, sorry, there we go. Sorry, next, there we go. And as you can see, in the out years, so these are the planned projects. We don't know exactly how they will land, but we think there's a need for them there. There is more pavement need, as you can see, more I-90 work to do. There's new pavement, Highway 61 and 43 in Winona. The pavement is probably due. I think we have some of those right now in 2028 in the Winona area. And then some other work potentially on Highway 61. And one project out in Altura, I think we think maybe 2031 right now. Again, these are educated guesses. They're based on the conditions and they're based on what we're seeing kind of in our numbers. So, and then zooming in is the next slide. This is the, oh, there we go. This is the Winona map all 10 years. So this is maybe the good one to kind of pause on and answer any questions that there might be. As you can see, when you look at the next 10 years, there are a lot of pavements that do need some kind of rehabilitation. A lot of those are just resurfacings. There might be one on I-90 that is a concrete overlay, but otherwise a lot of what you see is resurfacings. And then also, particularly with projects in Goodview or Winona or in other cities, we will be coming out to those cities in particular to say, okay, what else are we looking at here? We know about the pavement condition. We know about some of the infrastructure condition. What are other needs going on in these projects in these cities? So are there any questions about the 10-year program right now? Yes.
I had a constituent rather upset yesterday campaigning that he'd had a bad experience with the roundabout. The main one, he had major collision damage, and so he was ready to yell at me, but I said counties had nothing to do with that. Are we? And again, I saw on your earlier maps. Are we planning to do any more once you get this project done in Winona? Are you planning any more? I see you got some of those controlled RCIs. Restricted controlled intersections planned. Yeah. Those roundabouts and those seem to be the two buzz things that MnDOT likes now.
Kind of, yes. So they are, in a sense, the buzz things that we're talking about right now. So RCIs are reduced conflict intersections, and roundabouts, looking at data of roundabouts and RCIs in other parts of the country and even other parts of Minnesota over the past decade or more now, approximately. There's such a high reduction in the number of serious and fatal crashes that's why they've become more popular on the highway system. That's why we're looking at more places where we could put them in as safety measures. Regarding, are we going to put more in on the highway systems in Winona County? It is always possible. We would look at that. We would examine closely, okay, how does traffic operate there now? Can we get a good safety benefit by adding a roundabout? Does this help with both car traffic and maybe also bike or pedestrian traffic as well? If it's in an urban area, we would consider those sorts of things first. But let's take the Highway 43 in town project as an example. We think there's no design work that we've done on that one yet. We will actually be starting a scoping study on that one soon to try to get a better idea of what we should or could be doing there. So those intersections, none have been identified yet as, oh yes, we will definitely build a roundabout there. But I think we would look at some, again, for the safety benefits. So,
Well, having listened to this conversation and knowing the damage he had to his vehicle, I think
Mm.
I know you got PR people, maybe a few articles in the local media to explain how it's working now, and I think we need a lot of education for people how to drive them. And I know you've done some of that, but I think now that we're actually using that one more and more, and it seems to be most lanes are open, maybe just another article to say this is how you should, use a roundabout.
yeah, I think, yeah, we can definitely take that note. We'll definitely bring it back to continue the messaging essentially when it comes to
Yes.
roundabouts and why we're putting them in and how they benefit. It's really unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that this person had a collision in the roundabout.
Yeah.
This is also, I believe, Winona, the one at Highway 61, is the first multi-lane roundabout we are building in this part of the state too. So it's pretty fresh to a lot of people.
We feel we're an experiment, and let's see how the
We
experiment
don't
goes.
mean for you to be an experiment. This has worked and worked well. Like Mankato has multiple multi-lane roundabouts. So you're not maybe the guinea pig for Minnesota, but we thought that this would be the most appropriate control for that intersection, given everything that's going on there. Yeah,
Sure. And my constituent didn't use those words.
I see. Okay.
Other
Yes, go ahead.
Along with that, if there's any program that is actually a simulated program where you feel like you're driving,
Yeah.
because that makes a big difference. You can
Oh.
read about what you're supposed to do, but until you're actually feeling it, it's still new. And the more you can if you can simulate it.
Yeah.
My sister lives in Carmel, Indiana, and they're like the roundabout capital of the country. But I understand the concept of roundabouts, but if you haven't had a lot of experience with them, they can be.
That makes sense to me. That's a good suggestion. Thank you.
And so.
Go ahead.
Our board had passed a resolution for Highway 74 north from Elba there, where you had an improved service line, you put it back to Crushed Rock. I went to the state legislature, got Senate approval on you putting that surface back on there. Where's that at?
So I can tell you what I know from the planning department. I've been able to talk a little bit with Mike Doherty, who is our head of communications. What I know right now is our district engineer, Mark Schoenfelder, earlier this year made a commitment. I think he wrote a letter to the county or the board, or maybe just the county engineer, saying that we were going to keep with the gravel as the surface for now. That was what we intend to do, kind of monitor it, make sure that how we think the maintenance on that will go is actually going that way, just kind of as a trial. We did additional traffic counts on that specific stretch of roadway too, just to understand better where are their cars, where's the traffic higher, where's the traffic lower. So we have some updated numbers on that too. I would say as of this time, the district engineer still says we keep it as gravel for now. He will keep, I think the conversation stays open though, is what he also indicated too in that letter, is that we'll keep looking at this. We'll take feedback if we hear more feedback, and we will revisit this on a regular basis just to make sure this is working okay. Again, it's not an ideal scenario for a lot of the people that live out there, but we're just kind of monitoring the situation right now, yes.
Yeah, so I can see the road from my front window, and the amount of time that the graders are on that road and the amount of crushed rock that's being added, I can't imagine that can possibly be cost effective. But the safety issue is just until you actually live it and experience it. If there's not a good wind, that dust just lingers on that road, and then all the plant life on each side. So you got turtles, and you're in the middle of a whitewater wildlife management area. It's just covered with white dust. I mean, it can't be good for the environment. It's the clouds of dust hanging there. You have to drive super slow because you're just it's like driving in a fog out condition.
Okay.
So the safety is just it's just completely unacceptable.
Okay. I think that's an important comment. So thank you for sharing that comment. I got Cindy is taking, okay, we got the note. We can definitely bring that back. Yes, I think
It shouldn't take an act of the legislature to get you to you downgraded the road from an improved surface to a crushed rock surface. You're talking about pavement on every other road. Why you're singling this neighborhood out and treating it differently than the rest of the state? It's not going over well with my constituents.
Right, right. I can assure you, this isn't about singling any person out or any area of the state out. This was a decision that was made more along the lines of what was the appropriate fix for that roadway and the adjacent land use immediately surrounding that roadway, given its low AADT, so that's its traffic, as well as the fact that it was already a crushed rock surface with an autoseal over it. They felt that that was the best one at that time. We will bring your feedback back to them. Mark Schoenfeller has said he will continue to look at and monitor the situation. So he can change his mind. He just hasn't changed his mind yet. So, yeah.
Now, he doesn't, when I've talked to him, he doesn't make it sound like it's solely his decision.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I think regarding that, I think he's listening to his ADEs, so his assistant district engineers, as well as his materials engineer. I mean, he's listening to the advice of his engineers that would be experts on that. So he's listening to his operations team too, that's saying, okay, this is what we're doing for maintenance now. Maybe we should do it differently. So, I mean, he's listening to his advisors, but he still is the one watching this and making decisions on this. So, are there any other questions? Okay, I'll move on to the last couple of slides here then. I added this one, so I just wanted to give a couple extra updates too. We've already talked a little bit about the Mankato Avenue reconstruction as a project. This project is still moving along, as you can tell. It's in various different stages on various different parts of the roadway, but this, I talked to the project manager yesterday, who talked to the construction manager yesterday as well. This project is still on track for the both the trail and the lanes, the roadway lanes, to be complete to drive on by November or the end of November of this year. So this one should be substantially complete by the end of this year still, is what I heard yesterday at least. So
I'm sorry, all 4 roundabouts or just the main one?
I
You can't
believe,
possibly get the other ones done. There's nothing.
I thought there were 3, not 4.
Is it 3 or 4 total?
I think from what I heard is that the pavement would be complete or complete enough to drive upon. So I think they're planning on finishing up the roundabouts and
'Cause I haven't
the
seen anything
northbound
going.
lanes too.
They're halfway done with the other the smaller roundabouts.
2 smaller ones, yeah.
Are they? Okay, I guess I just avoid that part of town because
I understand. Yeah, Cindy and I drove it this morning. We're like, okay, this will be done by November. Okay,
and
put a little trust. Okay.
soon.
Yeah,
So it's a lot of
it
barrels.
looks very hectic right now, doesn't
Yeah,
it? But
yeah.
I heard word that they're still on track enough that they can finish it enough by this year that you should be able to drive on the whole thing come December. Then regarding a couple of other projects, I'll skip down for a second. At Goodview, there still actually is a planned project later this year. That's just traffic signal replacement. That one doesn't take too long, not a lot of moving parts. So that one is starting later this month. I think Goodview has some of the oldest traffic signals on the trunk highway system in the state right now, or at least in our part of the state. So those do need to be replaced and upgraded.
Is that the signal at 61 and 44th Street? It'd be the only one on main highway.
Probably.
By the
Okay.
highway- out by the
Yeah,
highway.
44th Avenue.
Dave
Okay.
Kramer confirms that. So yes, it'd be
Yeah.
one of those. Yes. Yeah. And so then the other project I wanted to give you a little update on was the Lamoille active warning system. We had the signs up last year, but it turns out we were actually missing component pieces because of a supply chain issue or shortage to complete the whole active flashing system. I talked to Mike Doherty yesterday, and we do have those pieces now, and that one should be installed and completed and active later this fall. So that again is the detectors that can detect when the roadway surface is icy. It'll actually flash that it's icy because that is a common occurrence on that particular stretch of roadway. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. Any final questions from the board, from commissioners? One more, yes.
Not a question, but I like your term fiscally constrained.
Mhm.
You said $170 million extra coming in from the federal government. But did you say we have like 11,000 miles of road? I think in one of your slides, you
In a
had like-
different slide,
So
yes.
that's $15,000 per road. I mean, you can't do much to enhance, even the existing roads. One of the things I find my constituents really gravitate to is, and maybe you could put a little bar chart. your major roads, like you're doing 52, really redoing it and
Mhm.
such, what is that at cost per mile? When we're talking millions and billions anymore, that just goes over everybody's head.
Mhm.
But if you can, and I know Dave Kramer does that for me, like what this road costs. And again, I think road costs went up. I think Dave said between 25 and 30% increase in our cost this year because of things.
Mhm.
But constituents gravitate to, well, that road costs, $1 million a mile, and they can, wow, that's a lot. But when you say 15 million or billions, it doesn't register with them. So, just maybe a little chart that says our average projects, they cost this much per mile or per bridge or something,
Okay.
is a tool I like to use.
Gotcha. Okay. And we can bring that information in the future because, like, in my head, I've got real rough estimates that
Yeah.
we use with our, like,
And
materials
it
engineers.
just needs
and,
to be guesstimates and
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. I think that's a good suggestion. And you rightly pointed or found out too that, like, that 170 million statewide
stuff.
in additional funds, when you
Peanuts.
spread it out across the state, which it is statewide, doesn't actually amount to a lot for maybe Winona County or just for Southeast Minnesota in general. But it is at least a little bit of help.
Yeah.
So it's a good injection, a good influx. Any final questions? The
Oh,
last
I'll
slide.
be
Oh,
curious to see how the snow fence along I-90 works.
Okay.
I see they put a lot of snow fence, and that surprised me and the locations, but I travel that often, so I'll watch it and see.
It's a relatively new thing, but we'll be watching it too. Yes.
Yeah,
At least
'cause
new for our state. Yeah.
That's an old thing.
Yeah.
Everybody else
It's old, but it's
always
new.
put up snow fence, and we haven't used snow fence in years. So
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting who figured that out again.
I agree. Yeah. My contact information and my boss's contact information. Heather Lukes is the planning director. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Take care.
All right, thank you.
So the next item is 7.2, select finalists for the county administrator position. I'm hoping that Mr. Patrick Melvin from David Down will lead us in this next exercise.
Good morning, Commissioners, County Attorney Soneman, Interim Administrator Holt, and Heidi. Good morning. Here we are again. We've been through this once before, so we're at that point where we're selecting finalists. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a recap in terms of what we did, we had the position posted from July 13th through August 9th. During that time, we had a total of 11 applicants. We then advanced 10 of those individuals. So those are individuals that met the minimums and had the background that had the potential of being your next county administrator. Since that time, we've had a few that have dropped out for various reasons. I think sometimes you get individuals who apply. We try and make it easy to apply. Sometimes it's very easy to apply where they really haven't put a lot of thought into if they're moving. They haven't done a lot of research, different things like that. So it's not untypical to have individuals drop out as we're getting closer to the interview stage, but we did lose 4 individuals, and I believe I did share that information with you in terms of the reasons for individuals withdrawing. So here we are today. We've got a total of 6 finalists that have been presented and shared with you. I just want to remind you again today that the names of those individuals is not public information. We will be referring to those individuals by numbers, and those numbers have been provided to you. So I guess what I would ask you to do is at this point to maybe start having some discussion, again, referring to applicants by numbers, and let me know who the individuals are that you would like to bring in for interviews. What we did last time was we had a total of 6 individuals that came in for interviews. And we could certainly do that again if you'd like, or if you'd like to narrow it down to a smaller number, that's entirely up to you. So if somebody would like to start discussion on that topic, it'd be wonderful.
Well, one thing I noticed is a lot of them didn't have a lot of travel, which would make it conducive to not being expensive to bringing them in.
And just as a reminder, assuming that we do the same thing that we did last time, what we did offer was up to $1,000 reimbursement upon presenting receipts for lodging, airline ticket, gas, that type of stuff.
And the last time we had one that interviewed just through Zoom. Is that going to be an option again?
It's entirely up to you. I personally think that we prefer not to do Zooms. I mean, it's much better to have the individual come. I think this was kind of a last minute decision where the candidate last time said, if I have to come in person, I'm not going to be able to make it at all. And so then I think you made the concession and said, okay, we will allow you to do remote interview. So that's up to you.
I wouldn't want to exclude somebody because, well, of course, we were more into a COVID protocols and everything. So maybe that was some of the decision, but I'm not against a Zoom. As Commissioner Jacob said, most of them are much more local this time, and one candidate is considerably far away. I wouldn't be opposed to a Zoom if they feel they can be effective through that. I mean, I think maybe it jeopardizes their presentation a little bit, but that, to me, I would leave that up to the candidate.
My preference would be in person. I mean, I've heard reports, so a lot of court things moved to Zoom during the pandemic, and there was body language that was missing, and they talked about how it made things difficult. So I think that's true for us as well. My preference would be in person.
But I wouldn't mandate it again if that's a personal decision, I think.
Yeah, my preference is in person because actually, one of the candidates said this last time, that it's really a two-way interview. I believe that by coming here, they get a chance to see the scope and a bit of the lay of the land, so to speak. They meet people face to face. I just think there are some advantages to that. So I would be more in favor of the in-person.
Mhm. Commissioner Olson?
Well, I would think, yeah, in person would be to their advantage. But I wouldn't exclude
Okay.
a Zoom.
I'd say ideally in person, but if it was a matter of them not interviewing because they can't fit the schedule, I would allow a Zoom.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can certainly recommend that they do it in person, but if for whatever reason it's out of their control and they can't make it, that you would welcome it. I think Ms. Holte was great about working with the IT department, and it went very well. So I appreciate the assistance from the county on that. So, okay. Great. So did I hear, are we in favor of bringing all 6 candidates in for the interview, or is there more discussion on the candidates?
I am only interested in 4 and 2. I'm really not interested in any of the others.
Okay.
Well, and I guess I thought one of the tasks was to come up, I saw somewhere top 3. Not that that's locked in stone or anything. So I did come up with 3 before.
I think typically what we do is we start out by saying, what are your top 3? And then, we go, and if we find some consistency there, then we can kind of work our way down to whatever number that you feel is appropriate. We typically try and keep that number a little higher simply because for a number of these candidates, they may have applied at other positions. And so we may see more individuals prior to that October interview date. We may see more individuals that withdraw simply because they got another job or something changes between now and interviews.
Yeah, when I look at the categories we were ranking on: experience, education, and the video interview. The experience category gave me some difficulty. I looked at our characteristics for the job. We had about 8 kind of bulletin points that goes along that's our job description. And then, so I used that with their cover letter and their resume. And what I seemed to find was that they may be experts or very respected in their individual categories of work, if it's a lawyer or whatever. But to take that next step and to be overall manager, overall administrator, overall evaluator, seemed like a big step to me. So I had a lot of difficulty with the education or the experience category. I also noticed some serious errors, what I considered serious errors in 2 of the cover letters, where people referred to, I'd be happy to, I hope I can please the citizens of the city of Sheboygan or something like that. And to me, huge red flag. If you don't check your details, that's like characteristic number 1 for this job. And yes, there are a lot of details coming and going, and priorities rise here and they fall here, but you still have to be able to manage all of those. And when their cover letters showed difficulty managing details, I had difficulty accepting them as a serious candidate. So
That's a very good point. Very good point. Yeah.
Well, my top 3, only one of them matched Commissioner Myers, so so I think we're going to have a hard time drawing out a couple of names. I'm feeling like, between your advice, that we might lose 1 or 2 between now and when we actually do the interview. I didn't have any of them that I looked through and said, well, I wouldn't even want to consider this person. So I guess I'm feeling like we should reach out to all 6 of them, and we might only have a pool of 4.
I really had only 1 that I considered strong enough to interview. So,
I had
and
3.
it didn't match any of
Yeah.
Commissioner Myers.
I didn't hear Commissioner Myers'
She
number.
said 4 and 2.
4 and 2.
Oh, 4, I'm sorry, missed that. 4 and 2.
Oh, actually, what I did, number 4 was my high one, so I did match Commissioner Myers in that one.
I had number 4 too. That's one of them.
Commissioner Olson and Commissioner Ward, did you
I would,
want to
I
share?
think, follow Commissioner Jacobs' opinion that we should, I'm hearing different things right here that maybe invitable.
Okay.
Although I do.
Experience is as Commissioner Kvesi said, is lower than I had anticipated. And there's going to be a learning curve with any of them, which to me is, I don't know if we have the luxury of learning curve. I guess maybe will be forced to. So I could go with bringing them all in and see if somebody really rises to the top. On paper, They're hardworking people and have accomplished a lot, but I guess it's just not what I was anticipating for applicants.
Yeah. It seems like many of them are department heads, but have not really managed
Mhm.
either a city or a county. And I don't think we're a starter county.
Yeah.
And some of the budget experience that they had, if it was limited to one department, working on one department budget, that's fairly limited. But also just the overall size of the budget. With a city, I believe there was one with a budget of $4 million. That's still has to be managed and managed appropriately, but we're not a starter county.
And I will tell you, just, based on our experience in the recruitment world, I mean, it is a tight labor market, and we are not finding individuals with the amount of experience that we would hope for some of these positions. So more and more in terms of cities and counties, they are having to bring somebody on board and provide more training than what they may have in the past to bring these people up to speed. And so, what I've heard from some is obviously that you look for those fundamental skills of, how are they in terms of dealing with people? How are they in terms of, general management? And then you look for that, and then you train more based on those foundations. So not alone in those frustrations.
I understand, the sentiment to bring them all in, but in fairness to their time and our time, if we're not really seriously interested, I don't see the point of bringing them all in, but
Well, if we were starting with a dozen, 15, 20, our job would be to narrow it down to 6, I would say. But we've got 6 here, and unless there's, I only had really one that I felt like that I didn't need to look any farther at all. If that isn't the same number as everyone else, then and given that most of them are pretty close proximity, we're not looking at a lot of travel expense to bring them in.
I actually had 3 that I wasn't interested in looking any further, so.
So if maybe we could have somebody make a motion and
I'll make a motion that we
that way.
invite all 6 of the candidates.
Second that for the purpose of discussion.
And we asked Commissioner Kavesi which 3 she was not interested in, because if that's already on the table, like we said, is it wasting their time and our time? Because I think we're planning on doing department head interviews again. Are we planning on doing citizen panel again?
I'm not in favor. I think we should skip this.
Last time the department head thing weighed in more heavily, I think, than anything, which I don't know who said. I don't know if I agree or disagree.
The 3 I had were number 2, number 3, and number 6.
That you did not
That I,
did or not?
well, I looked at all of, I finished I went through all the categories and ranked them all, but they were the 3 that I didn't think were strong enough.
Can you say again?
2, 3, and 6.
Okay, for the ones you did not.
Some of the education, even some of that wasn't necessarily current. I tried to look for how they kept up to date. Obviously, their credentials, were good in their own areas, but again, how much of it applied to the administrative management job that we have? And, were they current? So some of those even gave me some difficulty.
Mhm.
Video interviews, they went by kind of fast, quite honestly. I played them more than once, but I had a hard time finding some meat in them. But I know they're just an entree kind of, in some cases, they didn't make me want more.
Mhm.
I was looking for things in the video interviews. I was looking for things like how would you help Winona County improve our communication with the public in terms of budget and programs, and kind of what are our impressions out there? How can we strengthen that? And then how would you work to improve staff morale and communication? And then how would you utilize the department heads of both the elected and the appointed, to improve our operations? I was looking for just some hints
Mhm.
of something specific. And it was difficult, but I guess that's why it reflect. I was trying not to be in a bad mood. I really wasn't in a bad mood, but it was disappointing to me.
Yeah. And what we will be doing is obviously, as we go into, the actual interview, we will have more pointed, more detailed questions that will be more specific to Winona County. But you are correct in that in that initial video interview, we try and kind of leave it a
Right.
little more open because some people may not have experience in those areas and we want to get kind of a general idea of them. But you are right. I mean, it's general.
Well, and
Too
to me,
general.
it was an opportunity to take their experience and their education and give us a little, and some did and some didn't. So
Yeah.
that's the way,
Yeah, you really look to identify, has this person invested time looking into, what's going on in Winona County? Are they familiar with the issues that are being dealt with, and can they incorporate that into their responses? That doesn't always happen.
Is there further discussion? We do have a motion on the table.
Well, is there any one or more candidates that everybody would have a do not? I mean, Commissioner Jacob and Commissioner Olson said bring them all in, which again, they're all lacking in some degree or other that, we've experienced in the past as far as quality and experience. So yeah, do we anticipate being our top leader, in training? That's something that we have to decide if we can, but I have to ask Mr. Melvin, you've done some more searches. Are you finding the same? I guess we're concerned with the lack of experience at a higher level. They got experience, but it's at lower dollar budgets and more departmentalized. Is this a trend that you're seeing with other recruitments you've done for other areas?
Yes, I would say so, is
Yeah.
that we're finding people that, those people who do have the experience are,
So,
in most cases, settled into a position that they'll be at for a while. So there's not a lot of movement, at least not within the state that we've seen. I did have a few individuals that contacted me after the deadline date, individuals that seem to be maybe have a little more experience in terms of management. One actually had previously been a county administrator, but those applications came, well, and the application wasn't received, but the email inquiry was received after the date, which, to Commissioner Kvetzi's point, they didn't make the deadline date. So what does that tell you about their attention to detail? So, but
Are we ready to vote on the motion that's on the table?
I am.
So the motion was made by Commissioner Jacob and seconded by Commissioner Olson. And all six candidates in, or invite all six candidates in. Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay, motion does pass.
So basically what we will do is we will put together a brief bio of each of the candidates. And then similar to what we did last time, we'll get that to interim administrator Holt. And then if the media or anybody else wants that, that's something that if you wish, you can be shared. So the next thing I'd like to talk about, and I think what you were leading into, is how do you want that scheduled to go? What we did last time was we had a staff doing interviews. We also had a kind of a citizen panel that did interviews as well as the board. Is that the same structure? Do you wish to change that now that you've had that experience? Were there pros and cons that would cause you to want to do something different?
Yeah, I liked having the citizen panel.
If we stop and think who this person reports to, of course, they report to the county board. But in any major business organization, do you let the staff hire their boss, the department heads, and usually not. It's usually the higher rank hire their next person. So and it does take a lot of time to take department heads out basically from their day and do, now we're talking 6 interviews. Citizens, the ones that I've appointed, have always felt that was a very valuable experience for them, and they appreciated that, because that person, we report to the citizens, and this person reports to us and the citizens. So I find the citizen panel valuable. Department head value does have value and everything too, but it's just not something that I'm used to in a corporate world, that you would have your department heads hire their next boss. And although they have valuable input, I don't know how else we would get that input. But
I thought the department head feedback is valuable. You have to filter it differently.
right, yes.
Yeah, I thought it was valuable. I thought all 3 panels were valuable because they look at it from a different perspective. And then we get the feedback and then we filter it, just like you said. But I did think they all had value. With 6 applicants, it may not be possible to do it all on one day, unless we did possibly do 2 days, like 9 to 1, 2 days, or 8:30 to 1, 2 days. I don't know. That's
How many did we have
with
last
6,
time?
it's a lot to.
We had 6 last time.
Oh, did we have 6 last time?
Yes.
Then the one problem we had, I had on that long day, was at the end of the day, it was very difficult to discuss, and we ended up leaving out one candidate that we didn't discuss. And I thought that was very unfair. So, but it happened because we were tired and, so I don't know if we want to do ourselves a different time to review things and go over things. But if we had all 6 in one day, we must have done pretty well.
Well, in appreciation to the staff, there were a lot of moving parts going on
Yes.
at one time. And so, I had Dave helping out, and obviously Marine staff. And so, yeah, there was a lot going on. People were moving and there were schedules. But yeah, we could certainly break that down into 2 days. If that's something that you wish to do,
Well, if we did it in one day, that's fine. But our board deliberation, that's what gave me difficulty at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I could see sitting here and talking about it and reviewing our notes and you know, whatever, but making a final declaration after that long, long day was difficult last
Mhm.
time. And, you know, from my point of view, we had some problems with that. So,
Okay. We certainly could, you know, basically go through the interviews on day one, and then the next morning, if you wish to, you could have a special meeting and you could discuss the candidates the next morning, if that would be what you were thinking of, to give you a little break in between, because it is a very busy and hectic day. Yes, I
well,
agree.
it's a pretty monumental, you know, piece of work too.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we want to take all care and all due diligence, obviously.
Yeah.
I know we talked about this last time, was, you know, kind of sleeping on on the choices.
Yeah.
And then for some reason we decided not to. So it's just, I'm saying from my experience, I would like to sleep on it and come back the next morning.
How do the other members feel? Is that something that would
I
appeal?
think I'd like to see how it comes together. If we only end up with 4 responding, that might look different than, you know, as busy as getting through 6.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's true.
And once we do the interviews, they may sort themselves out very
Yeah,
quickly.
we had a couple of them last time that once they interviewed us,
Yeah, they ran.
I would support the same process that we used before, and I'm, you know, I'm not going to rule out that we could make a decision that same day that might become obvious.
I agree.
Okay, so there's still interest then. I believe what we did last time was we had each commissioner select 2 individuals. Do you wish to have those same 2 individuals? Do you wish to select new ones? I know we did have a little bit of a challenge in terms of one citizen bringing up issues that maybe weren't substantiated about one of the candidates. You know, that's obviously not something that we wish to get into during the interviews, but there was some information that probably should not have been shared at that time by this person. But
Why don't you send us the list?
okay,
Can they send us the list? I guess I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I can't speak for the people that I had last time, but I would choose the same people.
okay,
Yeah, I would have to check availability. That's always a factor.
okay. So then I will plan on kind of proceeding the same way as we did last time. I will send you each a copy of who your representatives were on the citizen committee. And we will plan on having both kind of the department head as well as the citizen group interview candidates.
The date is October
October
13th?
13th.
Okay,
Yes.
Friday.
not
So
30.
just confirming that that date works for all of you and that there are no conflicts. I think what we did last time was, you know, commissioner interviews were in the afternoon, and we tried to kind of start up with the citizen and the department head a little earlier in the morning. So I will work on putting that together. And then if we have any cancellations, anybody withdraws, that will obviously cause us to go back and reschedule. But we'll put something together for you to have a rough idea of what that day will look like. So any further questions from you? Do we need a board motion then to proceed with the same provisions as we used last time with regards to the reimbursement of expenses related to the interviews?
Sure, I'll move that we use the same process and same reimbursements as our last round of interviews.
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Jacob has moved and Commissioner Ward has seconded that we use the same process as last time. Now, I think that this includes the reimbursement, which we discussed, that the decision would be made on one day and that it's the 13th of October and that there would be 3 interview panels, the commissioners, the department heads, and a citizen panel. Is
Correct.
that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's the motion. Is there any further discussion?
Just a
Commissioner Ward?
question. Could you send out the questions? Are you going to use the same questions for the interviews that you used last time?
We'll have those same questions and I'll send those out.
Could
And
you
if you
send those out
want
ahead
to
of time?
change,
Yeah, maybe.
yep,
maybe
we
there's
can
something.
certainly tweak those
Okay.
questions.
All right. Thank you.
So, yeah.
I did just want to say that even though I am in the minority, I'm going to vote against this motion because I do not favor all of the panels. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of moving forward with the same process as last time signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Motion passes. We're going to have a 5-minute break.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next order of business is 7.3, select 2 commissioners to serve on November 8th general election canvas board. And if I'm right, they can't be individuals who are on the ballot.
Narrows it down. I nominate Greg Olson and Marie Cavesi.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Ward has moved and Commissioner Jacob has seconded to nominate Commissioner Cavesi and Commissioner Olson to serve on the November 8th general election canvas board. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item is 7.5, approve, deny, you are jumping the gun there. No, wait, we're not. 7.4, sorry. Like my bifocals. Okay, 7.4, receive monthly finance and budget update for 2022. Mr. Moga.
I'll be providing the July update. In the general fund, the revenue, beginning cash balance was 14.7 million. Actual revenues were 1.6 million. Actual expenses were 1.9. Ending cash in the general fund was 14.4 million. For the whole year, it was cash started out at 14.8 million. Actual revenues are 11.7. Actual expenses are 12 million, and ending cash is 14.4 million. The variance in the general fund is a negative 379 compared to a negative 487 for 21. For the grand total, the amount is actually a positive 554 compared to a negative 599. I do want to point out that community services is a negative at this point, but they are actually, and I did look actually as of August, they still are trending better than last year, probably about $750,000.
Excellent.
Any questions on this document? If not, we'll go to the summary. Summary, beginning cash starts at $19 million. Actual revenues are 25.8 million. Actual expenses are 25.4. Ending cash is 19.5. Variance is the 461 compared to the negative 599. Any questions on this document? If not, we'll go to the summary budget. Summary budget is at 58%, and looking at the expenses within each of the expenses, they're the only one that is running a little bit higher is highway, but highway is kind of a ups and flows, and right now we are in construction. Otherwise, everything else is looking good at this time. I do want to point out that revenues at this point are 55,009 for interest are 55,911, and we have a budget of 180,000. Any question on this document? If not, thank you.
See, Oh, well, I'll start this anyway. Okay, so item 7.5 is to approve or deny a future agenda item regarding policy and guidelines for public funds given to outside agencies. Can you take? Thank you. Yes. So this is the second conversation, which is not the real conversation. This is a time when I'm going to make a motion, and I am hoping to get 3 votes, that we would seek the county attorney's help and follow her guidance from back in 2017 to have a written policy regarding public funds given to outside entities. So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Commissioner Myers, seconded by Commissioner Olson to take on the assistance of the county attorney to draft a written policy regarding guidelines for public funds to outside agencies, entities. Is there any discussion on this? Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, a memo that was dated back on May 31st, 2017 kind of goes into a number of these issues that I think came from, Attorney Sonoma's office. Yeah, and I do like, one of the very specific things I do like where the outside agency has to provide the statutory specifics under Minnesota law, why they feel that they could get money. One of the big things that I somehow, and I'm not sure how we address it in a policy, but it's just guidance, is that, and I've had several organizations that are on that list that we give money to that citizens have questioned, that we give them a base amount of money, which they do. And I think this process will outline what we're asking them to do and are required to do. But then they do their main work with that base thing. And I don't know if we should or how we would control outside grants they get that do things that are can be either very politically divisive or contradictory to the neutrality of local government. And I don't know how you would control that or monitor it, or that's a concern of my citizenry, that county gives them some base money, they do their basic thing, but then they go off and get a grant and do something that's controversial. And I'm not sure Attorney Sonneman can address that in her research and how we would police or monitor or even if we can do that. But that is a concern in any policy that we write. Thank you.
So I'm just wanting to understand the motion a little bit better. I feel like we're maybe one step ahead on this. This is to get it to that final discussion where we would ask the county attorney, but the motion seemed to state we're directing the county attorney to work on this now. So I feel like, well, that was a motion I heard restated by the
we
chair.
received some guidance in 2017, and part of the guidance was that we should probably have a written policy.
So I'd like to hear the motion restated.
Okay, my understanding was the motion was to ask the county attorney for help with a written policy, but hearing it again, we're asking that the board consider that the attorney help us with at our next step. Yeah. So sorry if I.
It was just it just felt like we're one meeting ahead on.
Yeah.
I can support bringing it up for that discussion.
Okay, is there any further discussion? The motion is that at our next meeting, we have a full discussion on options to help with a written policy. Okay. We ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Good, motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Commissioner Chair.
Item 7.6 is to discuss and or appoint citizen advisory committee volunteers or volunteer. In our packet, there is only one. Commissioner Ward.
I would, being it is the number one for Sherry, is it Solar? I'm not sure the pronunciation. I apologize if to the Extension Committee. I would move to
That's a motion.
appoint her.
Okay.
Yeah, I would move to appoint her to the Extension, being that is her number one choice.
Second.
Commissioner Ward has moved and Commissioner Olson has seconded. I'll give it a try. I'm going to say Solier, right? The appointment of Sherry Solier to the Extension Committee. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion has carried. This brings us to additional business, so I'm going to defer to Commissioner Ward, who was going to propose a board action.
Yes, with comments that have been being made in the public and Mrs. Johnson requesting, this has been asked by a number of people, is I would like the board to discuss the voter cast record function to be turned on at our next election. The pros and cons and the, why it can't be, I guess.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, that is all that is required at this time. So I'm assuming that Commissioner Jacob, you do not have an additional
not,
board action?
no.
Okay, so I think that concludes our business.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Olson has moved and Commissioner Kavesi has seconded. Adjournment. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are adjourned. We had a break just 20 minutes ago. We want to just go ahead and proceed? Or do you want another break?
I'm good.
Go for it.
Yeah.
So at this point, we are having a working session. And the topic of discussion is the 2023 draft budget. And we have gotten some documents from interim Administrator Holte. Did you have any additional comments that you wanted to start us off with?
If I may, please.
I would think that would be great.
So the material within the packet, it contains the memo, which kind of gives you a high overview of the draft budget. Again, this is a work in progress. The intent is to give ample information for the board to have discussion about where they may want to set the preliminary levy. I would envision that there would be a little more discussion about the use of sales tax in regards to the highway department, and I have asked Mr. Kramer to be here to help that discussion. Mr. Moga is also here for any questions that the board may have. Excuse me. I did have Mr. Moga submit or provide you with two documents, which should have been at your on the table here today. And one is the statute in reference to the county transportation sales and use tax. And then a second document, just as informational again, on what the percentages would equate to for levy. And again, that's purely informational. I would like to see if there are questions that are specific to any of the commissioners that we can answer up front.
Just to clarify, all right, so what I noted from from your letter of documentation, that the proposal has been to shift 600,000 that would have been levied to the sales tax, and that is for road and bridges, right?
Correct.
And this statutory information is what we're looking at that tells us we have the ability to legally, statutory, we can do that. Okay, and then this is just for our calculation.
Right.
Given that you told us here that a one levy point was, yeah, then this is,
It's just to help correlate,
Yep,
you know,
okay.
what percentage and what that would equate to for discussion.
As a starting point.
Now, I would like to provide a little additional information after having a conversation with Mr. Kramer. And I'm going to ask Mr. Kramer if you would come up and assist with that conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So initially, Mr. Moga and I worked on the discussion of potentially utilizing the levy money, that 600,000 that is currently or was in the budget for road construction projects. But afterwards, I understand now that not everything that was stipulated in the plan can be used for those purposes, for sales tax usage. So I wanted Mr. Kramer to assist in that conversation so that you folks have a clear understanding of what we can and cannot use the funds for.
I guess I certainly want to, we had this conversation at the Road and Bridge meeting. And I want the public to know that I feel in full transparency and to supplant money that had been going to transportation, to supplant that with sales tax funds, that's going to look very disingenuous. The reason we adopted that half-cent sales tax was we were not going to decrease county funding. We were going to add that and do better on our roads and bridges. So if we're trying to decrease our standard 600,000 that we've been putting towards road and bridge and say that we're replacing that with sales tax, for me, that's disingenuous, and I want the public to know that I'm not supporting that before we even go down that road.
Commissioner Ward.
I echo a lot of Commissioner Jacobs' efforts and thoughts, is that the calls I think a rural commissioner gets is by far, fix my road, fix my bridge. What are you doing? Why aren't you, doing more? It's not some of the other functions that we do. I rarely get calls on other functions that the county does. Land use probably comes in a strong number 2, but roads and bridges is, and again, when we had this discussion, we did the initial vote, it was exactly as Commissioner Jacob said, it was to enhance our construction projects and the amount of things to do. So for us to look like we're playing a shell game, we're shifting funds, that is not going to set well with the public. And I think that would greatly jeopardize us trying to do a jail bonding with sales tax. So I guess in my mind, it can be a very short conversation. I'm not willing to do it. My constituents are like more money going into, shift. If you want to shift the shells, put more of the total money into roads and bridges versus some of these other projects, not increase, the levy or, the budget, but to reallocate funds. So in my opinion, this can be a very short conversation. I don't support it. It's not what I voted for. It's not what I think we should be doing, even though it says you can do it. From a public image and my personal preference, no, I'm not for shifting it. So
Yeah, we won't get the public on board with a quarter-cent sales tax to fund the jail if they feel like we're manipulating this half-cent sales tax.
Administrator Holden.
I did pull the resolution that was completed in 2016. And just as to
preference, sure.
bring up what it states is that the proceeds of the tax are dedicated exclusively to the payment of the capital cost of any and all transportation projects within Exhibit A. Mr. Moga and I did consult with the state auditors. Commissioner Meyer, you heard the reiteration of that from the state auditors the other day. As long as we modify, and again, this is if the board chose to, as long as the county modified the resolution and or not the resolution, but the exhibit that says exactly how the county is going to utilize the funds, it is permissible to do that. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I'm just letting you know it's an option, but it is legal to do, and it's not considered supplanting. Thank you. I was trying to think of the word. So I just wanted to share that, but
Sure.
So just to clarify that I think a copy of the statute was passed out. That is the statute that by which the state allows the county board to enact the half-cent sales tax. In subdivision 2, it does have specific criteria for what that can be spent on. In our case, it's the capital cost of a specific transportation project or improvement, and those have to be designated by the county board. So in the initial resolution, it designated essentially all of the projects in our 5-year CIP, and on an annual basis, there's been a public hearing that's been done as part of the budget hearing, and then a resolution that again designates all of the projects in the 5-year CIP. But it is limited to capital costs. Now, in the $600,000 that is currently in the budget that would go towards construction projects, roughly $350,000 of that would be the capital cost of our County 1 repaving project that's planned for next year. However, $250,000 of that would go towards our contract shouldering, which has become a part of our, a significant part of our maintenance that we do every year. It's very, very efficient, and they get a lot done for those dollars. That's essentially a maintenance function, the shouldering. It's not a capital improvement, so that's not eligible for the sales tax funds. So essentially the full 600,000 is not available to offset. Up 350,000 potentially could be. However, the other 250,000, if that funds goes away, we don't have anything, to do the contract shouldering with. That's, levy or use of reserves, I would say, would be the viable funding sources for that.
So in our road and bridge conversation, Dave, you explained that this 600,000 the county's been funding at a level of roughly 600,000 into road and bridge for, I think we went back 10 years or something of that nature. And that has not either increased or decreased very much. It hasn't varied very much, correct?
So when I started with the county in 2006, the discussion at that time was it was 500,000 going into our construction program, and had been that amount for a long time. As I've put together CIPs over the years, I've made some 2.5% little incremental, $10,000 a year, maybe adjustments to that to try to at least not have it get smaller in real dollars or inflation adjusted dollars. So it's, kind of, we've ratcheted it up to 600,000. It's been around that for the last few years, but it's been in that ballpark for decades, literally. That's been what the county levy has supported for the construction program.
Yeah. To me, if anything, that number should have increased by, a couple percent a year, and should probably be up over $1 million at this point rather than at 600,000. So you can say technically that it wouldn't be supplanting, but that's exactly what we were being called out for when we adopted the half-cent sales tax. Is would this happen? And yeah, I don't want to be.
Ward?
When we look at it, so I'm just looking at this sheet here, we're looking at over a $20 million county levy to put a minimal $600,000 into road construction. Now, we have other pockets of money to come in there, but that's proportionally probably pretty low. I agree with Commissioner Jacob. I mean, to my constituents, it's not enough. But then again, they don't want their taxes to go up, which I greatly appreciate. I don't want to raise taxes either. But the proportion of what we levy that we put in our local roads and bridges is a very small amount. And they would like to see that, shifted in our budget, not decreased or not, manipulated. So again, I can't support it.
Pat?
I was just going to point, if you want to look on page 184, you'll see the 600,000 that's been budgeted, and you'll see what has been spent in the previous years that are presented on here. 310 and 322,000.
So are you telling us that even though we budget the 600,000, we spend about half of it?
Yeah, we were spending 310,000 and 322,000.
What
And
page?
111,000.
I think he's looking at the budget details. What page, Pat?
184.
I've not had
Okay,
an
so-
opportunity to
Why? Why
dig
haven't we-
into that.
Yeah, why haven't we spent it all?
In the annual report that the highway accountant did, the numbers is actually well in excess of 600,000. So I haven't had a chance to rectify that. I think part of it might be the shouldering as a non-capital improvement, but more of a maintenance improvement. The tendency is to not put that towards that budget line, but to put it towards 310-6261, I think it is, the under highway maintenance, the contracted services. So our intent has been to make utilization of the funds that the board has budgeted for the construction projects. I guess my suggestion would be not to use that as a justification that the funds haven't been used or needed.
So, and you're thinking it's accounting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Kramer, just for clarification, would we then, if we're budgeting for it in the capital and it shouldn't be, or vice versa, would we then have a potential adjustment under the highway maintenance?
I
section?
would say yes. So the preliminary budget that was in the board packet had $0 under the county levy going towards its 320 construction contractors. If that were to be restored, I would suggest probably put that at a $350,000 level and take the other 250 and put it under the maintenance. It'd be under 310. I think it's 6261. It'd be the same dollars in the Fund 3 budget, but it would be accounting for that maintenance piece essentially under maintenance rather than under construction, which I think is probably from an accounting standpoint, probably where it belongs.
Kind of wanted to change direction a little bit and talk about the reserves. So when I look at, I'm looking at page 101 of our packet, and the projected balance in the reserves using the budget as it's been most recently revised, is almost 14 million, and the 3/12 is like 11 and a half, which looks to me like we have a couple million in reserves that we could apply towards this budget. So, but I'm interested in hearing the pros and cons of doing that, and what caution especially you might have about that.
So most certainly the board can opt to utilize the reserve. The more of the reserves that we utilize, the more difficult future budgets will be. We won't have a reserve to fall back on. And most certainly the more items that we are kicking down the road, which we took out of this budget that we're going to have to deal with in the future, we're going to find it difficult to have the funds to do those. So from a long-term perspective, it's going to make the ability to balance the budget more difficult.
Well, I find myself agreeing with, we should have the right amount of reserves so that we can maintain our good bonding rates at 3/12. Yes.
Oh, go ahead, you can finish.
Yeah, but to pad any more, if there's 2.5 million more than that, that's just taking more from the citizens than what we need to operate. So if that's available for this budget, I would support using it in this budget. But we shouldn't have any less than what we need in reserves, but we shouldn't have more. That's the most straightforward thing to do for the taxpayer.
Well, I have some specific questions on the September 13th cover letter. I think it was page, I'm sorry, it cuts it off on my document 99, where, we've got the draft budget, and then you've got about 6 bullet lines there.
Yep.
So specifically
What page did you say? 90?
I think it's 99.
99. I have a spare copy if you want it.
It cuts off when I print it. But anyway,
I've got it.
so let's see, the first is 5% health increase, the capital expenditure. Staffing, and this really, staffing is the majority of our budget, our people. So you say includes 711,201, 3.41 of present staffing costs reopening the jail. But then, so how many staff? So when I go back to the next page where there is this budgeted full-time equivalent FTEs, so we're going from, on the very top line in 2022, 288.46, and in 2023 we're jumping up 305.94. That's a change of 17.48. But when we go, and I remember go down to the line almost to the bottom, the jail line, it goes from in 2021 we had 25.51. And then in 2022, because we didn't have the jail operating, we dropped down to 14.51. That's a change of 11. But then in 2023, we're jumping up to 31.51. That's a change of 17. How can we drop 11 and then jump 17? And what is, again, I asked it for writing, but I never got it in writing. What is going to be our jail staffing number? And again, I know it's all based on how many prisoners I have, and I can't foresee today to pull up how many inmates I have in the system. My system isn't working. So 17 seems more than, we had 24 for years, and I was guaranteed we wouldn't go more than that. But why is it up to 31.51?
So the note on the bottom states that the jail FTEs reflect 6 temporary shift commander positions, which will end upon hiring the staff to operate the facility. So we had less in 2022 because we eliminated the detention deputy positions because we didn't need them through the year, through the jail construction. We need to add them back in 2023. So we have them in the budget and we have to count them as FTEs. Okay. But we're also going to be eliminating the temporary shift commanders in 2023 because we're going to open the new facility. So we're not going to need those. Okay. So we also hired more transport officers during the jail construction because we needed to transport inmates to other entities. Those will come back down in FTE count once we have the facility back.
So you're saying they're double counted?
Well, in essence, yes, because we have to keep them on until we're up and operating, and then we can eliminate positions.
What do you
But are
see
you
as the
saying-
2024 number on the full-time employees?
We will be back to what we were prior to the jail build.
It should be 290 something, not 305.
Well, I was talking about the jail
Oh,
in
the jail.
particular numbers. Pardon me, I thought we
Okay,
were still
I'm
on
sorry.
that.
So we're going back to like 24
Yes,
employees?
yes. We will not have more than 24 staff for the
Okay.
jail.
And
All
that
right.
was my question, if there was
Yeah.
any statutory
Yeah, what do-
requirement or if there was any way for us to reduce jail.
I
staff.
did get an email from Mr. Buswell, I believe yesterday, confirming that, the 24.
Well, I'm asking for total full-time equivalents. What number do you see in 2024?
The top line?
Well, that is a moving target. And I say that because it depends on how many grants we have, because if we keep hiring people to fulfill grants, that's going to raise the FTE count. It may not increase our total levy need, but it will increase your FTE count. Depending on if we transition functions externally to private sector instead of doing them internally, that may reduce our FTE count. So it's a moving target. I don't envision it to be more than what it was in 2022 for sure. But again, that's not 100% within my ability to confirm, because it's a moving target.
All right. The next bullet point there, bonds for construction. The jail, you have 652. The total though, so what else are we still, because I thought we were almost debt free a couple of years ago. What do we still have $870,000 bond that we're paying off? What's that?
Actually, what that is stating is we presently, our total bond will be 1.523. What we actually have in bond right now is we are levying the 800. So the increase this year was a 652. So it was getting us to the total of the 1.5.
Yeah.
So basically it was just saying that we were budgeting, we have in the present 22 budget, 800 and some thousand. We're adding 600,000, which
Okay.
gets us to 15,000.
Which is the total
Which is, should be
jail.
our total. We should be somewhere in that range. It's gonna fluctuate a little bit because interest and principal is always changing.
Okay, so it's not something else or, but it's,
No,
that is
no.
the jail bonding.
And
Okay,
it's because
I
we
miss-
split the bond over multiple years
Yes.
because the
And so.
breaking it up gave us better rates.
Sure. One big concern I have is putting that whole bonding thing and with the idea that we're still going to hopefully gather the 1/4 cent sales tax. Could that bond payment, my concern is we put that bond payment in a budget and budgets always seem to, well, you build on what you had. So it would never really go away. You just keep building on that large amount.
Unless
Could-
the board voted to decrease the levy.
Right. Well, yes. And that, I'm sorry, hasn't happened very often and it's never happened in my history.
Yes, it has.
Well, it's never gone below 0.
Yes, it has.
that did.
One, okay, one,
We did a
6, wasn't it?
No, we did a 6% decrease 1 year.
yes, okay, I'm sorry, yes. But it's an exception. It's not the rule.
Yes.
My desire is to put the bond construction, because I got a lot of people out there really, saying, gosh, didn't we get the vote on that jail? I said, no, you didn't get the vote on jail. It didn't require, a lot of people ask me, when's the referendum for the jail? I said, it's 3/4 built. There is no referendum. The public is confused. Can we put that amount on a separate line item on our tax statement? Don't include it in our budget so people understand what they're paying for. And then it's easier to remove it out of, in my opinion, remove it out of a budget moving forward. Can we do that? Tax statements, you have special assessments, you have special categories on a property tax statement. I mean, they're still going to pay it, but at least they know it's there. And in my opinion, it's easily taken off versus built into a budget going forward. And if we need to research that, let's research it. But I just would have some comfort in that.
I think we'd have to research that.
I don't
Oh, I know you would. I mean, I didn't expect an answer today, but
I just wanted to circle back about having the fund balance. The other thing that you want to be careful of, keeping enough fund balance in case we actually have a natural disaster, which we've had in the past. When we had the flood in Stockton, we actually had to take $5 million out of our funds and actually pay for that. And we actually didn't get reimbursed for that I think when they finally closed that down, it was 4 years later.
yeah, they usually figure a flood is a 5-year process. I've heard
So,
that thing.
we just want to make sure that we have enough to carry that and
Right.
not bring us below that 3/12.
Right. Okay, thank you. The comp plan, I know it's something that the planning department probably wants to do, but if we're in a tight budget thing, I think I could forego redoing a comp plan.
I think there might be a statutory requirement, but
But we've avoided that. We've never followed that before. We've been in arrears
well,
on that
that's great.
before.
However,
Yeah, we have been. I mean,
Ms. Cole.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, Minnesota statute passed in 2021, which is 394, the county chapter, 232 subdivision 6 states that counties shall update and review the comp-based comprehensive plan at least every 10 years, which would mean 2023, we get public participation, we work with all the cities and the township officials toward the conclusion with the county board in 2024. So that language has changed to shall, and it says at least every 10 years, and ours would be due then at the end of fiscal year 2024. Thank you.
okay, so that is a change, but we could always ask for forgiveness from the legislature, and we may have somebody that could help us out with that in the future.
so I
Because
don't
I
really,
just got a
really
card.
support that, but
I got a card from Houston County because everybody knows I own land in Houston County, and Houston County sent me a postcard saying that they were going to be doing the same thing. Now I want to follow through with them, what they've budgeted
so
for
the
theirs.
other thing I'd like to poke at a little bit with the rest of the board is,
I'm not done with my list yet.
please, oh my God, okay, please continue.
Okay, can I well, there's one more point there. The 86, it's a decrease, but purchase 10 new leases. What 10 new leases do we need on our fleet? Is that
So I'm going to have either Mr. Kramer or Mr. Moga go into more detail on that. I mean,
And it is a decrease, but
I know what there was, is we actually had provided to Enterprise, I don't have all the details, but we had provided to Enterprise some options, and there was an option where 0 new leases, or there was actually 10 leases, and that really was basically taking some vehicles that are aging out and then getting a new lease for that, and there was 10 new leases for those in various departments. I don't have the exact details of which ones, but we could get that information for you.
so it's puzzling that we have 10 new leases, but we have a decrease in the amount. So are we decreasing who is that your department?
It
David?
is, it's Aaron Lafee under myself.
Right.
And I didn't bring that information
That's
along.
okay.
In a general sense, so the county's using Enterprise to smooth out our vehicles costs, and then also to, have decent vehicles for the staff to use that are reliable. So in managing that, there's a certain amount of leases that run out, and we can continue to just own and operate that vehicle. There's a point at which we're better off trading it off and starting a fresh lease on that vehicle. So there's a constant, cycle of vehicles falling off the lease and new ones getting renewed. So this is a situation where, under our ideal scenario, our budget number would be X. We looked at it and okay, this is a tough budget year. If we take 10 new leases and drop them off and basically take 10 vehicles that we currently have that the county owns and just continue to use those for another year, that's a savings of $86,000 on the budget. Correct me if I misstated that.
And have you
Okay.
reviewed how many vehicles we have?
Yes,
And we're at a bare minimum?
we're at a minimum to be efficient with our, there's obviously a balance of
Right.
having efficient numbers of vehicles for the staff to use versus having more than we need. And we're constantly looking at that and
Okay.
tweaking, making sure we're efficient with our use.
Okay. All right. That right now, that ends my list of questions,
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you. Although, you know what? This is a working session, so we're more informal. You could actually call me Chris if you wanted.
All right.
The other thing I'm interested in knowing how other people on the board, other commissioners on the board feel. So this idea of the capital improvement plan, the boiler for the LAC, which is the $340,000. I understand that there is a risk in terms of kicking the can down the road. The other part of that is, as Commissioner Ward has said, if we are successful in getting the sales tax passed, then that puts $1.5 million back into the budget. So we potentially would have that money to deal with the LEC next year. And then we had also discussed possibly not buying both the snowplow and the loader, but doing them in the order that Mr. Kramer had suggested, and maybe not buying all pieces of equipment. I'm kind of like to know what other commissioners think about it.
I think we should be staying with one snowplow a year. It takes about the length of time with their rotation, they become about 12 years old by the time we replace them. And that just feels like one of our highest primary duties is to keep the roads clear for, emergency vehicle, ambulance needs to go, the road's got to be clear. And if the loader is needed, it's needed. I'd support.
I was looking at the capital improvement area also, and it's a terrible risk to delay any of those. But looking at our numbers, it does seem like cross our fingers, on the boiler and delay that. The snowplow or the loader, and the snowplow and the loader, I'd have to go back to Mr. Kramer's advice on that. I don't want to get out of sequence with our snowplows. That's really important. But I thought he earlier told us the loader was his first priority rather than the snowplow if we have to make adjustments.
If
So
there's only going to be one, I would say yes, it's more urgent and critical at this point because of the condition of the loader that we would replace. However, I would echo what Commissioner Jacob indicated as far as, if we don't also replace a snowplow, then we fall behind on that. And, that's our bread and butter for keeping the roads open in the wintertime, is having those be decent vehicles.
There was a time where we had done multiple snowplows in a year.
yes.
So I just don't want to fall below
No,
one.
the sequence is very important for that. And obviously, we have to give our employees safe equipment to be operating in, which
I do.
falls into the loader category also.
I do agree with not spending money on the LEC boiler. I mean, we don't even know the future of that building. We don't know what.
Yeah, I am in agreement with you.
Yeah, it seems like we can cross our fingers and
Yeah.
hold our breath on that one. The snowplow and the loader are more critical.
In, Ms. Holte, in 2022, I know, I think Karen Sanis is back there. There was one instance here just a couple meetings ago, we finished a contract. We didn't have a contract with, I think, Family and Children's Services or something. It was about maybe $170,000 contract. So how much money have we saved, over the last couple of years that we've budgeted that we haven't spent? I mean, by shifting things or getting different contracts or grants? Do we have, I mean, it seems like we should be saving some money. We should be having some more revenue somewhere coming in because we've been, and Pat reports that, Human Services is doing a much better job at revenue recapture and everything. So, I mean, we should be gaining some, but it seems like the budgets always creep up. Do we have any sense? And we've got that reserve at it's the unrestricted reserve at 2.9. Am I right on that? 2.9, 2.5? Yeah. That figure we threw out earlier, 2.9, 2.5.
2.383.
2.383. Okay. When, other than the flood, have we ever, gone below? And then we keep 11, 11 million and another, the 3/12 expenditure, 11 million. When have we ever come close to under 10 million, other than the flood situation?
At this point, I can't say that we've ever gone to that point. I mean, there's times that when we're getting to the, collections, when we're the 6 months out, that it's going down lower.
Sure.
But I'd have to go back and see what the lowest amount it was at that point. But
Well, 6 years ago, we got down just under 10 million.
6 years ago.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's an exception, not the rule that
We've been operating on this 3/12 now for a few years, right?
Right.
And so this is your proposal, Maureen, to add that up a couple, 2.5 million above 3/12?
Nope, I'm not proposing it.
are you saying that 13 million that and saying that where we are, where our balance is? That's just saying where our balance is. Are you looking at this document that's provided?
Well, I was going back to Commissioner Meyer's statement of the reserves being, or were you just looking at the current snapshot?
I'm looking at whatever is in here on page 101 of the packet.
Yeah, we're what?
This is a projection. I
Yeah,
mean,
13,952.
Yeah,
And-
on page 105 of the packet, this is a projection of what we would envision, given what budget is before you, of what our balance would be potentially at the end of 2023. So in looking at that, that is where we're saying you could potentially have about 2.5 million there if you wanted to use reserves. So I'm not recommending one way or the other. I'm trying to provide the best estimate of what may be available to you to utilize of the reserves.
So,
And that's projected out a year and a half.
yeah,
Right.
so for example, if we decided not to go ahead with the boiler at the LEC,
Mhm.
and we used 835,000 of our projected reserve, that would be like 1.175 million, which is something like a little over 5% of the levy. So we could cut the 13.5 down by 5%. And that would bring us below 10, right? So it's just an idea. I understand that we don't want to ride the projection too close because it's a projection. And yes, if we had a 1,000-year flood, we would be in trouble.
And when you're using, like, when we were taking out the boiler, were you using the 350 or were you using the 175?
340.
Because we already have actually taken out half of that
Yeah.
project.
Okay, so you've already taken out
Yeah, because we were looking at.
175, 170.
or-
175. So on page 99,
Okay,
at the bottom of the page, so the suggestion was to potentially budget for half of the boiler in 2023 and the
somehow I
second
read
half
that
in
as half of the
2024.
parking
Again,
lot.
just a thought. It's not,
Okay,
So if we take out that boiler right now, it's 175,000.
Gotcha.
We've already taken half of it out already.
but we could still, if we took half of the projected reserve, or actually less than half of the projected, if we took 1 million, right, we'd still be able to reduce the levy 5 or 6 points.
But also you were adding back in the sales tax project, right?
No, I'm just saying, in 2024, should we be successful, we would have that.
No, I'm talking about.
600,000.
The 600,000.
Now you're adding putting that back in, so.
Was that taken out
yes.
Yeah,
in the
In the document you have,
13.5? It was taken out. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
so again, in the paragraph at the bottom of page 99.
But you still got the 492,000 for monument courthouse parking lots.
Correct.
Could that be put off for, I mean, is the jail, is that whole area going to be ready to face a major, parking lot repaving? I mean, with construction still going on and everything else, and we could follow the MnDOT example, leave it gravel,
Well, so no, I thought that the city required
turn
something
it back to
else.
gravel.
And so we would have to ask for wiggle from the city, right?
The monument parking lot, we have an agreement to do that. Most certainly, we can ask if we can put it off a year, but we do have an agreement that we would pave that, correct, Mr. Kramer?
That's correct. That's a zoning requirement under the city zoning. Okay, county to operate that with gravel through the timeframe of the jail construction.
Well, we could ask them if they have a cost sharing grant that they'd be willing to share
Can
with
take
us.
that out of your 600,000?
Yeah.
We could potentially look at the courthouse parking lot, and I would want to work with Mr. Kramer and Mr. Lafee on, what we could do to address some of the safety aspects of the parking lot, to get us through another year. That could potentially be an option. It's not ideal because there are safety concerns with that parking lot.
Well, you look at 492,000, it's, that's 2% levy to do that.
Well, the 492 is actually the snowplow truck, the
Oh, am I
loader,
reading
and
the
the gas
wrong line?
pump. Yeah, so it's
Oh,
the
the-
amount is 340.
Oh, but that was the boiler, she said. So what is the paving?
175.
No, that's
Oh, that's
the
the
boiler.
boiler you
I
said.
misread that. The
Yeah.
492,000.
No, paving is,
Oh, my gosh.
No,
Or what-
there's a colon there, or semicolon.
Yeah,
It says
But
the
then-
monument and courthouse parking lots, and half of the boiler at the LEC is 340.
okay.
Oh, I see.
The paving is 165 is 45,000 in the monument lot, and 120,000 to completely redo the courthouse lot. So if you wanted to kick one down the road, I would say the courthouse lot would be the one to do that. We can Band-aid that along for another year. However, there's really a commitment to the city to do the 45,000.
145,000?
It's 45,000 at the monument lot, and 120 for the courthouse lot, so that's like.
Oh, that's the 165. Gotcha. Okay.
In the total budget, I know there's, a lot of due diligence has been done, but one of the, I feel, personally, I always question is the professional and, I forget the term, contracts. Have those been thoroughly scrutinized? I mean, we've got 285, 88 employees, and yet we put a lot into those. And I know some are and I guess maybe the category is too broad for me. I know some of them are maintenance contracts on pieces of equipment, but then I've got lawyers reviewing, documents, and I've got lawyers sitting over in a building next door. Have we really scrutinized those? And have we asked, because when you add up that line, it's a lot of money throughout the whole budget. And I feel like maybe there's some extra, my gut says that maybe there's some extra dollars there that we could scrutinize. Have we ever asked department heads to look at a 5% reduction in their budget? What would it look like? How would it affect the operations of Winona County? Maybe 2%, maybe 5%, maybe, a scenario. And what would our department heads, who we depend on to put this together, and yourselves, what would it look like? What would we be missing out on? How would life change for the average citizen that is being asked to pay the bill?
Over the years, I know that we have done that. Has it happened in this current process? No. Mr. Moga and I have been very upfront with every department head, every department representative about where we're at, and that we need their help to thoroughly go through their budget and make revisions to the best of their ability. If they're at the point of where they're going to impact the services to the citizens, then that's something that we would need to know prior to making a change in the budget. Because I did not hear the board say they wanted to reduce services. So to answer your question specifically, Commissioner Ward, no, we have not done that in this cycle. But Mr. Moga and I will be continuing to have the conversations between now and when the board sets the official levy, because most certainly we're going to reduce where we can reduce. But we really need some direction with the preliminary levy, and understanding that we need to set it at a level that we know we can meet it. And most certainly we can come down, but we can't go higher. So I understand the reservation of setting a higher levy at the preliminary, but I need you to give guidance on where you're not in agreement necessarily, but.
I believe that we need to stay competitive. I mean, the labor market is incredibly tight. There's 10,000 open jobs across all of southeastern Minnesota. So if we as a government want to function, we need to pay at what the market is. And we need, it's the same thing for hiring an administrator. So I don't want to cut services, and we need to continue to pay so that we can attract employees.
Well, I'm not referring to what we pay people, because I know to get good people, we'll have to pay more. But there again, it's drawing this fine line as to the services we are providing and what is mandated, and then what is funded by federal and state dollars, and how, again, revenue recapture in those programs. We do a lot of things that probably aren't mandated. Are they bad things? No. But we're asking a constituency that is attacked by inflation and other elements beyond our control, but it comes down to how can they continue to pay the money we're asking them to pay. Property taxes aren't optional. They're mandatory. I mean, sales tax and income tax, that flows with what you're doing, but property taxes are, we send the bill and they're mandatory. So again, and it's somewhat interpretation. And it's just like when I asked about the outside agencies, have them refer to the specific statute that says, this is what we're required to do. And I know it's not an easy task, but I think, at some point in time, and it's an oxymoron. The federal government keeps throwing all kinds of money at us, and we had all this ARPA money and we handed it out willingly. The state government has a huge surplus and they don't know what to do with it. And here we're sitting asking our citizens for huge increases out of their pocketbook for their property taxes to do local government. It doesn't make sense, folks, and we can't keep asking them to pay the bill.
Mr. Kramer.
I'd like to speak to this topic briefly if I could. I anticipated this type of discussion might come up in this difficult budget cycle, and actually discussed with my staff. And we didn't look at what's mandated, what's not mandated. I looked primarily at what could we cut out that would not affect safety and function/mobility on the county highway system. And so the types of things that we identified is chloride on our gravel roads. It doesn't affect both of those. If you live on a gravel road and you're choking on dust all summer, it's a big deal, but it's I don't know, $20,000 that we could cut that would not affect safety or mobility on our roads. Weed spraying. It's a requirement that we control noxious weeds, but if we let the wild parsnip and the thistles just go for a few years, that's something where we could cut a few tens of thousands of dollars from the budget. So those are the kind of things where, we could potentially cut, but it's going to be, maybe $50,000. It's not going to get us very far. We get beyond that and we're affecting safety and we're affecting mobility.
I appreciate that.
Administrator Holton.
Commissioners, Mr. Moga and I have had discussions with the departments as we are meeting on the budgets about what things are we doing, just like Commissioner Ward said, what things are we doing that we don't have to do? Which ones are we maybe competing with the private sector? Can we phase out of these services? Not eliminate services because they're still available in the community. And so we do have departments who are working on those things. It's just, it takes time to put together a plan that we can then bring forward to the board. So we are having those discussions. We're just not ready to present them.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. County Attorney.
As you said, it's getting more formal, but I just wanted to comment. Commissioner Ward made a comment about the attorney's office, and I just want to correct the record on that. We don't have a lot of professional services contracts. We do most of our work in-house, and in fact, I have created teams of my attorneys, and we've stayed at 15 staff. There's 16, and I do want to address that. But we've had 8 attorneys in my office for the last 12 years since I've been county attorney. We have not added attorneys, but we have become more efficient. And
You have 16.
I'll explain that in a minute.
Okay.
Because I do have a way to save you money.
All right.
But anyways, I've created teams, among them a tax team, to address all the other tax cases other than the major ones, such as Walmart here has fought the county over taxes. And so we had gone with a tax attorney expert to help with that case because it's huge. But all the other cases we have been doing in our office. And the murder cases, we haven't sought any help, although the Attorney General's office usually would help. But I have created these, if you want to call them concentrated teams. Nobody's an expert, but we're able to leverage the skills that I have in my office. So we've maintained 15 attorneys for the last, 8 attorneys and 7 support staff doing all the work, and the work's increased. I mean, it's not gone down. And we've managed the programs that have saved the county money with our, what I call Smart on Crime programs. Now, getting to the 16, I noticed this when I was looking at this chart on page 100. The drug court person is listed separately, but that position is actually out of my office, and I supervise that position. So I think that's double counting there, maybe. Drug court is listed as one FTE, and that is the coordinator, but the coordinator position is also in my office, and that's why we have 16 instead of 15 now. So you might want to look at that.
So Katie Shield is also counted as under your area.
She's a grant-funded person. Yeah,
Well, I understand, but FTE is an FTE.
And she's actually, she's coded to your department.
Okay.
Right.
okay, well, I wanted to clear that up. And then I also just wanted to, in terms of looking at programs that really work and save money down the road on multiple fronts, including human services. The jail intake worker is a key part of our RAP program, the Winona Reentry and Assistance Program. And I see that that's gone to zero a couple years. And I think that's part of, I hope it's part of the jail now, the jail sheriff's office. So I don't want to be losing that position in 20.
That is under Health and Human Services. The jail.
Half under Health and Human Services and half under Mr.
Okay, it just shows up as zero on the chart.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
but we save, I think, a lot of money down the road in Health and Human Services because these folks don't then show up at the emergency room for mental health and other kind of things. So I just want to clear up some of those misconceptions about professional services that we don't contract a lot, other than administration contracts with a employment attorney for work. So thank you.
So what do you need from us today, Ms. Holte?
We need direction of the preliminary levy because we need to set that by the end of September. So the staff need direction so they can prepare the proper paperwork to have in the next agenda packet.
Which was due yesterday.
We're making an exception.
Due to who?
Our office.
Internally, yeah.
Yeah.
Not somebody.
So before we started discussion today, we were looking at a 2.8 million difference.
Correct.
And I think we've talked about changing some of the capital outlay.
And this is what I have down as notes, that we're gonna add the 600,000 back. We're gonna take half from the boiler out because we had half in there. And we're gonna take out the courthouse parking lot. Right, and those are the only three that I have. I don't know if there's other ones.
Actually, the information Mr. Kramer recommended for revisions.
They-
The two, yeah.
Moving the
The 350 and
350.
the 250, but that's still,
The
the net
net.
effect is putting the 600,000 back in.
Okay,
That's, they're putting the 600,000. So just to clarify those numbers that Mr. Moga just indicated, on page 99 of your agenda, there's a $340,000 number. That includes the monument parking lot, the courthouse parking lot, and half of the LEC boiler. So if you drop the 175 LEC boiler and the 120,000 courthouse parking lot, that's 295,000. That would change that 340 number to a $45,000 number to accomplish the monument parking. So that's 295,000 there to the black.
But overall, it would be an increase to the negative 2.8 because the 600 minus the 175 minus the 120 is an increase of 305.
305 to the back.
Yeah, so instead of being a negative 2.8, we'd be a negative 2.8 plus 305.
over 3.
So Ms. Holte, when you're working with department heads and scrutinizing, do you have a dollar amount goal? Any concept of what you think you can squeeze out of the system? Or are you just asking if they can?
Well, we're trying to do whatever we can. But yeah, I mean, if we can get, it's going to be really hard, but we're hoping to get another, 250,000. But it's going to be hard.
The other topic is, of course, the state legislature did not address this, but there was talk of trying to increase the county program aid. But I don't think Winona County, I don't think it was significant. Pat, do you have a number?
They were going to actually increase, if everything would have went through this year, it would have increased by 80-some thousand.
Not
We actually
huge.
took a decrease because that law didn't pass. So
And where is that figured into the budget?
it's actually under county program aid.
Is there a page
It's
number?
in multiple locations. It's actually under,
Yeah, you divide it out.
yeah, it's under Fund 1, Fund 3, and Fund 5, which is actually the general, the highway, and human services. And it's object code 5209. But if you'd like, I can run you a report and send it out.
And again, I know there was lobbying from AMC to ask the legislatures to increase that because of the number of programming they ask us to continually do, and they're underfunding it considerably. If that'll happen, we don't know. It's not in our control.
Yeah, we would have gained about 278,000 had that have gone through.
Yeah, and that would have been, you know, 1.5% of levy.
Just 3 or just over?
Question from Ms. Lundey. So does the budget also reflect the opioid settlement, the 90,000 per year that we're?
No, because we do not have confirmation of dollars of what we will receive, and that will end up being a wash. So it really isn't going to impact. Well, in the sense of if we have revenue coming in, the county is anticipating spending it, so it's not going to help the overall budget in the sense of bringing the levy down.
It has to be spent on those types of services.
Right.
That it qualifies for.
Right.
Right, but if it can not supplement. I mean,
Right, but it can't be used
it's-
for other items, you know?
It's supposed to be used for abatement.
Right.
We can't supplant positions with that.
I understand, but if,
Pay for.
yeah,
You know.
I understand, but if it's used to leverage some of the funding, I mean, that's, 90,000 isn't anything to sneeze at, and it's 18 years, so.
Right, but right now it's not in here because we don't have anything confirming dollar amounts or anything, timing of when we may even get the monies.
And we haven't received any money yet either.
Right, it was supposed to be started
supposed to be
to
August.
distribute in, well, April, I think it was. Or something.
Well,
Yeah, I can address that quick too with the opioid settlement money. I was part of meetings last week and they're stating because the payments were supposed to come out after August 1st. We have not received payment. We have not received notice of payment. No, okay, I'm looking at,
Is that through the Attorney General's office?
yes,
Keith
yes,
Ellison?
yes. And then, so I was on meetings just on Friday and they're stating that we should see that those funds coming in within the next few weeks. So, and can I address Commissioner Ward's comments about my budget? Yes. So I do want you to be aware that, we have to, instead of looking at the overall Health and Human Services budget, we have to look by program. And I do want to state that there has been a significant reduction over the past couple of years in out-of-home placements. And that's because we're doing some more of that preventative earlier intervention services instead of having kids enter into out-of-home placement. And we're going to continue to want to do that. The other thing I want to address is our healthcare billing, our waivers that we have for our disabled individuals. So when you say you don't want a reduction in services, if we are not going to be able to add staff because our referrals keep going up, and 40 hours is 40 hours. So if we have 5 FTEs administering a program and referrals going up, the number of billable units is going to go down per person, which is less service coordination for the individual. So I just really want to put that out there that we're going to continue to see our numbers grow in these areas. And then, but we're going to maintain our revenues. And so it's going to be less hours of service coordination per client is all I just really wanted to address too. So
Why, in your experience, why are referrals going up? What's driving the increase in referrals?
number one, we have a higher elderly population due to the baby boomers starting to get into that 60 plus age group. We're seeing doors opening
2 other programs for disabled individuals to be able to enter into like our community alternatives for disabled individuals. That is our CADDY program. Those doors are opening for more individuals that have severe and persistent mental illness, where people are getting diagnosed earlier, to be able to provide those services. So we really want to look at, and those are our preventative services to keep people out of our deeper end services. Once they've hit the jail, once they've hit the court system, once they've hit, out of home placement, those preventions, those are our higher end. And not that we don't do a wonderful job with our CJCC. I will tote that all day long with what they are doing when they enter into Karn systems over there, and Sheriff Ganrud's, the jail and things like that. But if we can move those services further
That's amazing.
upstream before they hit
From reserve.
the jail and they hit
I'll get a say, right?
and there's research that is based on this to provide those earlier intervention services to keep people out of the deeper end services. So
But I'm a baby boomer, yes.
Yep.
But I try not
That's all
to,
No.
but we also have the baby boomers trying to pay these tax bills.
sure.
And so, I mean, there more and more people like my friends, they're on retirement, they're on fixed incomes. And for us to consider continually raising, what they have to pay to us,
Mhm.
it's tough. It's
Yep.
not easy. I didn't say it was easy.
No, and I'm not saying, I'm just
Yeah.
offering
Sure,
information
appreciate
as to how we can continue to save
Yep.
money within.
Now, are
health and
some of
human
those,
services.
again, do we need to those are federal dollars?
Federal waiver dollars,
Yeah.
yes.
So again, and this.
Majority, there's
our
some state.
Revenue recapture has got to be, a
Yeah.
high priority too, unfortunately.
Yes,
It has.
yes, yep. And so I'm just providing, when we're going to continue to see some of these contracts coming across desks in front of you when you're reviewing them, always think about that. Is this a way to divert people out of the higher end, deeper end
Mhm.
services and more costly services?
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Yep. You're welcome.
Do you need something to work with? Brilliant ideas. Steve? Here's what I was thinking. We'd go at 10 preliminary, and that's $1 million from reserve. That should get us to the three, whatever one that we need. I was doing my ciphering right.
And why do you feel the need to keep that extra $1 million in reserve when we already have the 3/12?
Threw it out there.
Okay, I mean, no real reasoning why you want to keep that?
Would the projection be a little more secure by the end of the year?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's why. That's why I think. If we are feeling more secure about the projected reserve when we get to the final levy at the end of the year, I'm open to going higher.
I would use it all currently the way things are, because you're not making, if you're not making money with your money, which on Pat's report, we're not making interest or anything, and we're asking people to take money out of their pocket, they're not making money. You might as well take the reserves and spend it, because you're not making anything with it. If we got money in the checkbook and we're holding it, but it's not growing or helping the people. Right now, I think they need the help in the initial, property tax statement they get at the end of the year. So I would use all of those undesignated to offset.
I would agree
Levy.
with you in theory. I keep money set aside in case my furnace goes out. So that's part of what the reserve is for. I would feel more comfortable going higher at the end of the year. We'll have another opportunity and we'll be more sure about what the projection is. That's my logic.
But that logic is really like pretending that the 3/12 11 million doesn't even exist. I mean, it does exist. That is real money that we're keeping there for, a catastrophe. So,
I'll be more secure about what it is. It's not that I don't think it exists, it does, but I'll feel more confident about
yeah,
it.
I don't support keeping any more reserves than what we need to maintain our excellent bond ratings.
I'd support splitting the reserve, knowing that, I mean, the purpose of the preliminary levy is to set a ceiling. And knowing that by the end of the year, we'll have a much better indication of what we can do with those reserves or whatever. So if we set a ceiling and then say, great news, we're down below it. We've done that every year with our ceiling. I don't think we've hardly ever stayed with the full amount that we've set as a preliminary levy. So I would be more comfortable setting a slightly higher preliminary levy and then knowing that there is still some wiggle room and we're obviously still going to continue scrubbing the budget.
I remember a conversation with one of our pastors, and he says it's always good to have a church in debt because then people give. Now, we're not asking people to give, we're demanding payment. But if you don't tighten the belt, people don't tighten the belt. They just go along as is. And I think it needs to be, for lack of better terms, a belt tightening system. When you look at the overall economy of our whole, our whole country and everything, inflation and the expenses that go up with running a household. Yes, our expenses have gone up too, but I think we need to tighten the belt. At home, maybe we only turn on one light bulb instead of two. But I mean, I can control that. If I don't ask people to control it, it just keeps growing and growing. And I think we can get creative and I think there's some stuff in there that could be eliminated.
I think with our discussion today and in previous discussions, we have been tightening the belt. It's pretty extreme. And it's going to continue to be. So that's about all we can promise to people right now. Set one levy as a preliminary amount and then continue to chip away at it, which has been our past practice.
So when you talk about the only place left to go would be reduction in services, I am a commissioner who's willing to look at reducing services to the effect of that. If it's not mandated by state, I would be willing to look at whether we need to be providing that service or not. So I'm willing to go there. Also, this budget is largely, the deficit aspect of it is, the lion's share of it is the jail, which I voted against. So I'm very comfortable with not supporting a tax increase in the same way I didn't support the jail, and that I am willing to dig deeper with both tightening the belt and reviewing services that are not mandated.
I have a difficult time with the services that are not mandated because I see the effect of the prevention services are, Karen has just spoken to that. Karen has many preventive services. We know that there would be much higher mandatory services if we didn't spend those amounts as prevention. So we can look at it, but it would be a difficult conversation. I'm not saying there's none in there that we wouldn't be able to reduce, but I don't know how many.
Many of these programs were conceived 5, 10, 15, 20 or more years ago. To say that nothing has changed and there's would be no benefit in reviewing that. When you say we know, we haven't looked at that. So,
well, we review the changes every year. Treatment court is a prime example of keeping people out of jail. Mental health services keep people off the severe end. And yeah, we're just kind of plugging things in, but those are very necessary, even if they're not mandated for our overall amounts. And we know that they are a cost savings.
Value the health and human services programs. I get emails from my constituents with concerns about things they're not getting. I think road and bridge is important as well, but I value them equally. And so I would be willing to go ahead and shift the levy money for road and bridge. I feel like we already have tightened our belt on health and human services. The industry standard for span of control, which is how many people report to a single supervisor, is 8. And we're double that and have been higher than that prior to implementing the plans that were advised by the last audit, which really mean that people have so many direct reports that they're unable to adequately monitor the controls that are in place. So, I feel like we have already tightened our belt, and that if we look at all services equally, we have already done that work. And while it's a year to tighten our budget, I would also be willing to look at additional items under that capital improvement plan. Because I feel that those are equally important to our citizens.
A little more guidance on what the preliminary should be proposed at.
So Commissioner Olson has proposed 10 as the preliminary with the idea that we would
more of the reserve,
take about 1.5 out of the reserve. Is that
no more.
about that?
That way we would still have room to go down. Because we know more of the projection would be firmer. Well, this whole conversation started with saying no to 600,000 and no to a snowplow. So, and I agree, but we go through this, it seems, every year, and then you're just gonna say no, it's to 0. So, that's why I'm at 10 and use the reserves.
I'm okay with that proposal.
I don't support it.
No. Keep working on it.
We are.
We are.
Keep working. Don't give up.
I appreciate all the time and effort that you and the rest of the staff have put into figuring out ways to cut back in the ways that you have. A significant amount of dollars already. So.
Yes, there's been a significant amount of serious work, and I appreciate the department heads and everybody, realizing that it's, we have several things that are quite unusual that happened to us this budget year, unfortunately. And we are not going to stop looking at the amount. So if we have to set a preliminary, that's been our practice. We do continue to look.
So if I'm reading this right, the bonds for the jail at 1.5 that's representing almost 7.5% levy. If I look at the sheet that you handed out.
7.29.
Yeah. Okay. There it is. Yeah. So
This year's
people,
increase, it's 7% of that.
yeah. So I mean,
No, I'm sorry, this year's
increase is 3%.
is 3%.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we raised the levy last year in part to
but I
cover-
mean, total picture. Citizens want to know the total picture. So I really want to advocate doing research on putting that as a special assessment. And with the idea that maybe it will go away if we obtain the 1/4 sales tax.
And we will continue to work with the management and the representatives in each department to see what we can do to bring it even further down. But please know that they are all working very hard to cut where we can cut and be creative in how we can get from A to Z. Okay? All right, and if you have questions after, please contact me so we can get that information to you. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.